The next Phyllis Schlafly? Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of my podcast, Explicitly Pro-Life. I'm Kristan Hawkins. Today, we're going to talk about a new New York Times op-ed that you've got to check out. All right, so Helen Andrews, the editor of the Washington Examiner magazine, recently had an op-ed in the New York Times last week. It was entitled, "Where are the social conservative women in this fight?" And she asked the question of where is the next Phyllis Schlafly? That Phyllis Schlafly has many descendants, but no heir. And she talks about Phyllis Schlafly, how she got involved in the movement to stop the ERA. I mean, she is the reason we don't have an ERA. She's one of my heroes because of that. Why she stood up for the family, for women. And then today, the assault that we're seeing on women and families in our society. And she makes a really good point. And I know New York Times has a paywall, like I think after 4 articles a month, it's not free any longer. So it's kind of at the beginning of the month. So use this as one of your 4 free articles. It's worth it. I won't pay for the New York Times, so I really hate at the end of the month if I want to see an article to the New York Times, my paywall has been expired. But it is better than Wall Street Journal, because Wall Street Journal makes you pay for every article, and that's just a bunch of crap. So this article is interesting because I was lucky to know Phyllis Schlafly, be mentored by Phyllis Schlafly. In fact, I'm looking at a picture on my wall. It was a framed eagle that I was presented by Eagle Forum right before Phyllis passed away. So she's just like this lioness, right, in this movement of stopping the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, or we call it the Everything Related to Abortion Act. And it's been a privilege and honor just this past spring to be like picking up the mantle on this fight and working to stop ERA from actually being ratified in our Constitution, which is, we talked about this, I think, last week or the week before, because this is like this new thing that the abortion rights movement wants to do, is they want to get ERA put into our Constitution, ratified, because they're terrified Roe and Doe are going to fail. They've said so, NARL has said so in their own fundraising emails, that they want ERA to pass, to be ratified, because in states that have ratified an ERA and put it into their state constitution, their state Supreme Courts have found a constitutional right to abortion taxpayer funded, and that's huge, right? That's a big problem. And this is what we know. We know this is where they're going. The abortion industry is going, and in this fear of Roe being overturned, they're doing everything they possibly can right now. They're throwing all kinds of things and just kind of seeing what mud sticks to the wall, essentially, or in the mom's case, what slime sticks to the wall. So, Phyllis, stood up at an unpopular time. And the ERA was going to pass. Like, everyone was like, yes, we're pro-woman. It's the 1970s. And so there really wasn't a lot of attention being paid to what the ERA would actually do. So Phyllis stood up in an unpopular time and said, no, we need to stand for the family. And there are consequences to destroying the nuclear family unit, because all civilizations, all good societies are based on good families. And so goes the family. So goes the society, so goes the civilization, and she wasn't the only one, right? There were thousands of women, thousands of families across the nation who were happy to stand up next to her and join her in the fight. And so Helen Andrews' article, she's talking about, in the years since, Phyllis's fight for Stop ERA, a lot of what the feminists envisioned for women has already been passed, right? I grew up, my friends grew up in a generation where, getting your diploma, going to college, finding the career of your choice, getting married, having kids, you were told you could do it all, right? I am woman, hear me roar. And that was like your feminist duty, right? To prove that women were strong enough and women were capable enough to have a career and to have a family. But what Helen Andrews is arguing in this article is that we have some damage being inflicted upon our society. What she's saying, and what I've personally felt and witnessed, is that millions of American women are really right now suffering the consequences of the feminist 1970s revolution. that we're trying to have it all, but we're at the end of the day, when it finally gets quiet in our homes, we go to bed exhausted and often feeling like a failure, right? I always get asked a lot by students, young women who are pro-life leaders on their campuses, who want to go full-time in the pro-life mission field post-graduation. But they also want to have children and get married, obviously, hopefully get married and then have children. And that's like the number one question I get asked from students all the time is, how do you have it all? How can you run Students for Life and run this multi-million-dollar organization and have a family? And I think everyone's always searching for like the silver bullet or kind of a magic solution, and really there isn't one. And that's what I tell students all the time is that there really isn't. And it's a myth. This is a feminist myth that we can have it all. Yeah, we can have it all technically, but you're gonna pay the consequences, and you're gonna have to decide what are you willing to give up in order to quote unquote have it all, because you will give up something. And that's my advice for students all the time is find out what your priorities are, find out what you're willing to sacrifice, because every moment you're away at work doing, even if you're involved in something like the pro-life movement where it's a life-saving mission, where you're changing culture, you realize you're giving up time with your family. You're giving up seeing your child take his or her first steps, or hearing your child say his first word, or watching your child score that first goal in the soccer field. You're going to miss things. And so you have to decide, is what you're doing worth it? Is the mission you've been called to worth it? I mean, that's why I feel so blessed that I can do what I do and make a living off of it. And, live a pretty comfortable middle-class life, right? For my family. But I would hate, I was thinking about like, what if if I think about all of these women who go to work every day and hate their jobs, and hate, the career that they've been either found themselves in or feel like forced in, or maybe it's just a job they won't even call it a career. It's just a job to make ends meet. And what a sacrifice that is to go and to do that job every day and to be away from your family. But you're doing it for your family, right? So your family has food to eat and has a roof over their heads and can take the vacations you want to take. But so that's why this Helen Andrews piece was so interesting. Because, the points she makes are really good. Something that need to be considered. They're not, by the way, very popular. She actually talked about, Tucker Carlson got in trouble because he started questioning, the wisdom of having, pushing women into the workplace and what it means. And I don't actually think it's women in the workplaces versus men in the workplace. I think the question really is single income families and dual income families. What happens and what's changed? Because I literally just had this conversation a couple of days ago of what has changed in our society, right? We went from having a single income income earner, so traditionally the man, the wife stayed at home, and now we have dual incomes, or mother and father both work, but your life hasn't gotten better. The family's life hasn't gotten better. And Helen, in her article, she actually quotes Senator Elizabeth Warren's book on the two-income trap. And it's fascinating that Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote this book when she was a professor at Harvard. I think it was early 2000s. I don't think in 2019 she would use these talking points as a major speech platform, because especially who she's trying to court within the pro-abortion Democratic Party. But it's interesting that she quotes Senator Warren's own book, where she says that, Warren articulated that, marriage no longer offers today the financial security that once did, where it used to be, getting married meant you would live a life of financial security. But that's not actually the case. And the quote was, when mothers started entering paid employment in large numbers in the 1970s, it led to a bidding war over middle-class entities that left everyone paying more for the privilege of being no better off than before. Wow. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you think about, it made me think about our family, right? So the last few years that Jonathan, my husband, worked, he was a public school teacher. He taught civics and history to middle schoolers. We figured out like his income, his salary was paying for our health care, which is very important, especially with 2 kids with cystic fibrosis, paying for our health care, paying for his car payment, and paid for our nanny. That was it. When I finally sat down and figured it out, I was like, wait a minute, if you didn't work, we wouldn't have to have 2 cars. We wouldn't have to have nanny. All we have to do is figure out how to pay for health care. I mean, it was this huge revelation, right? That one of us was literally working just to pay the nanny to take care of our children when we were gone away from them. And she was getting to experience all these amazing things that our kids do in a day when we were missing out on that to make money to pay her. And our nanny was a fantastic human being. I love her to death. But I want us to have those memories. I want us to be able to reflect on our time with our children growing up and to remember those things. Not to have our nanny remember those memories. Not to remember those cute things our kids said or did throughout the day. And so I think this is why I love this article. Because what she's saying is that this dual income family situation isn't working. And she had the courage, Helen Andrews had the courage to say, and that's why I get what she's saying of why aren't female social conservative leaders, why aren't they speaking up about this? Now we have a whole movement for paid family leave. In fact, Students for Life, our organization, is going to be doing an entire Capitol Hill lobby day with our Students for Life leaders on paid family leave, advocating for a fiscally responsible plan where, you'll be able to, mothers and fathers will be able to borrow against their future Social Security benefits in order to take paid family leave. So it's not going to force employers to pay more money, especially, small businesses or mid-sized businesses. But it's your money anyway. You'll just be able to take it sooner and you just delay your retirement, which makes more sense, right? Because when you're younger, you actually need more money than when you're older. My parents eat way less food. They consume way less gas. Their house is already now paid off. They need way less money to live on than someone like me, who is kind of in the prime of her 30s, who has 4 children, and is trying to make it all work. And so, she talks about, conservatives have made all of these things like paid family leave. At Students for Life, we have a program called Pregnant on Campus of how to transform our college campuses and even our high school campuses to support pregnant and parenting women, right? So no woman, our motto is, so no woman ever has to feel again like she has to choose between the life of her child and her education, right? Because we know, if a woman drops out of school, gives birth, and is in poverty, a child born into poverty is 7 times more likely to live in poverty his or her whole life. So if we don't want to stop the cycle of poverty, if we want to stop it, we have to make sure she isn't living in poverty when she gives birth, that she has that career that she can fall back on. She has that degree that she can use and put to good use. And so it's interesting because I think as conservatives, as social conservatives, we spend a lot of time talking about how can we support women in the workplace, how can we support women on college campuses. In the pro-life movement, we've had this whole slogan, pro-life is pro-woman, pro-life is pro-woman, because all we've heard for 40 years, and we still hear it on college campuses all the time, is, pro-lifers hate women, right? Or pro-lifers are anti-woman, because, for advocating for the little girl in the womb is somehow anti-feminist, it's anti-woman, which is completely crazy. And so in order to change the narrative, in order to change the way people view pro-lifers, we've been very strategic in the pro-life movement to make sure that there's women leaders out front, which it's for us is, I think our challenge right now is we actually don't have enough young male leaders in the pro-life movement. And there's actually, we hire men and women, but I can tell you just from the applications, we have far more women applying to work in the pro-life movement than men. And I think that is going to be a problem. It's actually one of the number one questions I get from young men and actually older folks is, where are the men? We need strong men, because we need men speaking to other men, because we know that, number one reason she chooses abortion often is because of lack of partner support, or perceived lack of partner support. Maybe he does support her, but he's been told by his mom to shut the hell up and never talk about it, because it's not his body, right? And we've seen a lot of really sad stories in the past 13 years at Students for Life of young men not wanting women to, their girlfriends, their partners, to choose abortion, but then they don't feel empowered to actually say anything. So what happens is, she doesn't want to have the abortion, but she doesn't find anyone who can tell her, no, don't do that, I'll help you. He doesn't want her to have the abortion, but he's too afraid to say anything, because that would be considered anti-feminist and anti-woman. And so at the end of the day, they pay someone to kill their baby, because they haven't communicated and haven't shared their real feelings. So I think in the pro-life movement, we have made incredible strides to show America, to show our nation, that we are not anti-woman. We're actually pro-woman. That's why we serve in this movement. The whole tagline, the Feminist for Life tagline of "Women deserve better" has been one of the most effective taglines that we have, the most effective slogans that we have in the pro-life movement, to show women across America that abortion is going to hurt you too. However, I think in our rush to kind of placate those who yell and scream at us that we're anti-woman, to show them that no, we're really pro-woman, I think we've stopped talking about the value of women who stay at home, the value of a family where only one person works, because we don't want to speak out, because we're afraid that we'll be labeled anti-woman, and that's going to hurt our cause, which is ending the greatest, human rights injustice that's ever been known to man. That's abortion, obviously. So it's fascinating, because I even think about, what we as the pro-life movement do. You never hear pro-life speakers or pro-life leaders speaking out for traditional roles, right? Or where families, where there's one person, a mother or a father, who stays at home with their children. We never talk about that, but yet we know that's important. We know that we have to have strong families. Everything always comes down to the families. When we look at all of these, depression rates and the suicide rates and drug and alcohol abuse amongst teens, a lot of it's related to their families and how they were raised, who they were raised by. Right? We've spoken about the role of men, and the role of fathers in the family. There was an interesting study conducted by a lot of the I think it was a USCCB, I'm not sure, but it was Catholic bishops that commissioned a study not long ago. I was speaking with a bishop about it, and they found that you have a lot of women who go to church and take their children to church every week, but they found that the kids are still slipping away, right? They're still losing their faith. They're turning away from their faith in their teens and their high school years. And they said the biggest predictor of whether or not a child would stay active in their faith growing into adulthood wasn't the mother going to weekly mass, going to daily mass. It wasn't the predictor. The biggest predictor was, did the father go? Was the father an active participant in his faith? Did the father talk about his faith? And I thought that was something that really struck me, of the role of the dad and how important dad's role is in our society. But we don't talk about that a lot. We do commercials kind of making fun of dads, right, for not being able to do laundry or make dinner or whatever. My husband doesn't make dinner, but he does do the laundry, and he does it way better than me. I don't even know how to, I don't know if I should admit this. I don't know how to operate our washer and dryer. We moved to a new house, and we have a new washer and dryer, and I have never once done laundry on it. And I was trying to figure it out the other day, and it's just too high tech for me. So yeah, I guess, ladies, I am very lucky, and my husband is taken. But I think this article though is so important, and it's such an important discussion for us to have in the pro-life movement, because we're not addressing it. We're not talking about what's really going on within the families. We there's like that. I know you all probably have seen those memes, right? Where it's, what's put on Facebook or what's put on Instagram, and then like what's been cropped out, right? What's else is going on in the picture. I think about that man who was in, I think, South Korea, who was doing that BBC interview a year or two ago, and his little girl like strutted in dancing, and then the baby comes in with the walker, and then the mom comes in and tries to like crawl, and she doesn't realize the camera angle, so everyone can see her crawling, and she's trying to pull the babies out of the room, right? Or this guy's like, he's got his like map up on the wall, and he has a suit on, and then there's like this chaos going on behind him, and he tries to like block away the kid, and then he kind of just lets the kid just do whatever, and he just tries to concentrate on this interview, this very important interview he's on. But I think it's so true for people, for families who have two working parents and children, right? There's what's perceived like, oh, we have this great life, we have this awesome house, this great car, we go on these great vacations, and everything's awesome. And then there's what you don't see that's put on social media, right? There's the chaos of the house, the laundry that's been stacked up in the corner that no one's folded for 3 weeks. I always think about what you all see, right? When you see me on whatever cameras, if I'm doing a Facebook Live or even on this podcast, right? You have a very clean picture of what my desk and my office looks like. But what you don't see is the chaos that I'm literally surrounded in. The fact that I've got crayons and Post-it notes and construction paper all over the floor, and all of the bills that were stacked up on my desk just 5 minutes ago, before I start recording, are now in a pile on the floor that I'll have to pick up and reorganize after I'm finished with this podcast, right? I'm actually surprised there's not a kid at my feet right now. Often when I'm doing radio reviews, there's a kid on my feet, literally sitting on top of my feet, because apparently that makes a really good seat, with a blanket and their own iPad underneath my desk. That's what goes on while everything else has this appearance of calm and professionalism. And I think that's what so many American women, American men, just families in general are feeling at the end of the night. We've accomplished a feminist dream, right? We have the careers, we have the house, we have the cars, we have the clothes, we have the kids, we have all the stuff we can show. And at the end of the night, we're getting in bed and it's finally quiet. It's just exhaustion. And what did I forget to do today? What were all the things that were on my list that never even got touched? And how the hell am I going to find time to do it tomorrow? Maybe I'll get up earlier. I think this is an important conversation, and I think pro-lifers, we need to be a part of it. Is that, yes, families matter, families are important, and we need to talk about the roles of mothers and fathers. And I think we don't need to be so afraid of how the other side is going to portray us, what they're going to call us. Because this is what I tell our students all the time. Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how freaking cool you are. It doesn't matter how many curse words you use, how cool your hair looks, so it's dyed pink or purple or whatever, how many piercings you have. It doesn't matter, like, how cool you are. If you're in all these other social justice clubs on campus, at the end of the day, the fact that you oppose abortion, which we know is the world's greatest human rights atrocity, the very fact that you oppose abortion is going to cause you to lose friends and not be liked. And people are going to attack you simply because of your belief on abortion. And you can do all these things to kind of offset it, right? I remember when I was in college, people would say, "Are you pro-life?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a pro-life feminist." Why did I use the word feminist after? I mean, granted, I, believed in the feminist myth, right, that you can have it all. And I never felt like I was inferior to men because I was the highest GPA in my high school and my college, right? But why did I feel so compelled to use the word feminist after I said pro-life? Why do my friends who are Democrats say, I'm a pro-life Democrat? Why do they feel compelled to add another word after the word pro-life? Why? It's because we're signaling when we do that there's something wrong with the word pro-life. That there is a brand problem with the word pro-life. And so we have to kind of qualify our pro-lifeness. I'm pro-life, but don't worry, I'm also a feminist. I'm pro-life, but don't worry, I'm also a Democrat. Or I'm pro-life, I'm also an atheist. I'm just pro-life. Yeah, you might be an atheist, or you might be a Democrat, or whatever. Who cares? But why do you feel the need to say that? Have you ever thought about that? Why the hell do you feel the need to say that? Because when we do that, we're acknowledging there's something wrong with pro-life. That we don't want people to think of us as whatever we think people think pro-lifers are, which is probably old, white, Republican, Christian, carries a cross and yells at cool women, right, in front of abortion facilities. That's kind of what I think we think pro-choice people think of us. And there are a lot of pro-choice people who think of us that way. I just think we should be more worried about the title pro-life and less worried about all these other qualifiers, because when we start adding in these qualifiers, it actually starts to divide us. We start fighting over tactics and strategies in the pro-life movement, and the identity politics starts to come into play, and the second thing starts to become more important. There was a pro-life feminist during the Donald Trump election who I screenshotted this because I thought it was such an important reminder. I sent to some of our team members. I said, this is a reminder of why we need to be careful of saying I'm pro-life, and because she was arguing about Donald Trump and why she wasn't going to vote for Donald Trump, and she said, but I'm a feminist first. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I would have said you were pro-life first because you were a pro-life feminist, but that second word, especially in identity politics, starts to take on shape. Why is it that I was talking with a pro-life Democrat the other day who said, I'm done with Democrats. I've tried so hard to change the party from within, to change the direction of the party, to make sure pro-lifers are included in the discussion, right? But it's not working. And it's funny because this other person and I, we've had a lot of disagreements over the past, and it's usually over that. It's not over pro-life. We agree on the fundamentals. It's that Democrat and I'm a Republican, and we disagree. And I think there's been times, and this person might disagree with me, but there's been times where pro-life Democrats will vote against the interests of the pro-life movement in order to advance the Democratic agenda, right? The interests of the Democrats. Case in point was a good example was Obamacare, where you had a lot of pro-life Democrats say that they supported the American Affordable Care Act, ACA, Obamacare, because pro-health care is pro-life. But what we knew going into the vote, we knew very early on that Obamacare was going to be the largest expansion of abortion ever. The Planned Parenthood's funding was going to skyrocket, which it did. It went from $300 million to over $500 million in the course of 1 year. The HHS suddenly ruled pregnancy a preventable disease because now contraception had to be paid for. Hormonal, potentially life-ending contraception had to be paid for by healthcare work, by employers to their employees, and we've just had all these conscience rights regulations and lawsuits and Supreme Court decisions because of Obamacare, because of this. So I think that's really important to talk about, is these qualifiers. And so I think we as pro-lifers, we have said, we're pro-life, we're pro-woman, and so we have to have these discussions about, yes, of course we're feminists, we're pro-women in the workplace, and we want women to have blah, 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 but we've stopped kind of talking about what happens to families and the importance of families. And I think we need to start paying a little bit more attention to that, folks. I think we need to be talking about that a little bit more. We've got this paid family leave lobby day coming up with Students for Life very soon, and we're going to be advocating for this paid family leave, this fiscally responsive plan so mothers and fathers can borrow against their own Social Security to be home those critical first 6 to 12 weeks of their child's life without forcing, small businesses and middle-sized businesses to have to pay when they don't have the money to pay for, a temporary employee and to pay their other employee's salary. And so I think paid family leave is actually really important for the pro-life movement to take on, to say this is how we want to support women in the workplace, because we realize that the workplace, hasn't conformed to women. Women have had to conform to it. Stephen Rhodes, a UVA researcher, has talked and researched a lot about the threat of gender-aligned societies. And there's one quote he used. He said, the problem with a gender-aligned society is that it has a tendency to transform itself into a male-dominated society. So male interests, male values, male priorities set the agenda for women who aspire to break into the ranks of the powerful. So women have to conform. And I think that's exactly what we see today with the workplace, right? That women have had, the workplace hasn't been built around women as mothers. We've had to build our lives around it. And that's why I think paid family leave is so important. But it also leaves that question of, what are we doing? What are we doing to ourselves? Because it's exhausting having two parents working. And our kids don't get to see us. I mean, this is crazy. If we want to have stable families and we want to have healthy families, the best public policy goal we could possibly have might be to go back to having one parent at home at all times. And I'm not saying it has to be the woman. I think looking at statistics, we would know if there was a public policy goal to incentivize one parent to stay at home. I think higher percentage was definitely going to be women, but that's not going to be the case. In my family, it wouldn't be the case. But I will tell you my personal story, like having my husband now stay at home. It's a job it's a thankless job that he has, and I think it's a job that he never thought he would have. And so it's hard. It's hard, especially hard on men, right? Who have this view that they're supposed to be the breadwinners for their family, to go to not making any salary. I always tell my husband his salary is going to come in the hopeful college scholarships that our children obtain because of their homeschooling, right? But it's difficult. But he takes care of the family. He's making sure everything, all the clothes are being washed, everything is clean in our house, that we've got food in the refrigerator, that all the kids' meals are getting made, they're getting fed, and especially in our case with cystic fibrosis, they're getting the medicines and the breathing treatments they need 2 to 4 times a day. He's making all of that work. We don't get compensated for it, right? And there's no tax credit for homemakers or even homeschoolers. Hell, the books we buy, this drives me nuts. I pay ridiculous amount of school taxes to live in Pennsylvania, and we don't send our kids to public school. I have to spend about $1,500 a year on curriculum and books for our children for their homeschooling course that we use. That's not even tax deductible. And what kind of crap is that, okay? But maybe this should be a public policy goal of us, of let's create incentives. That maybe the pro-life movement should be the one pushing it. Like, let's create these incentives so families can return to being single income families where they can actually survive, live a middle class, comfortable life. And maybe everyone will be a little happier, a little less stressed out, being able to go to bed at night going, wow, what a great day. I got to see my son kick his first or second goal to soccer game. I got to watch my daughter twirl around in her little play dress. I got my work done. The house is in order. We're good for tomorrow. And when the next day comes and you wake up, it's not this constant barrage in your mind of, oh my gosh, was everything I forgot to do yesterday or didn't have time to do, and how am I going to fit into my schedule? Maybe that should be one of our public policy goals as a pro-life movement. Maybe we should be unafraid to speak out, because like I said, they're going to hate us anyway because we're anti-abortion. Just own it. Don't be afraid of it. They're going to hate you anyway because you're against abortion. So stop trying to like conform. And I think we as a movement need to stop trying to say like, we're trying to change how you view us so much that we actually lose sight of things that are actually going to be helpful. That are actually going to save families. That are going to create healthy families and create a healthy society. So anyway, I think you should check out this article. Like I said, it was written by Helen Andrews. Where are the social conservative women in this fight? It's the New York Times. It was last week. Check it out. It's definitely worth one of those free articles you get this month. It's the beginning of the month, so you shouldn't have used all your 4 free articles yet. But check out this article. I think this is a discussion our movement needs to have. Thanks, guys.